Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today again I'm joined by Toby and we're going to go through the biggest problem facing your club at the moment, and we're going to go through a handful of teams, starting off with Manchester City, who in recent weeks they've lost 2-1 to Spurs in the League Cup, 2-1 to Bournemouth in the Premier League, 4-1 to Sporting in the Champions League, and 2-1 away to Brighton in the league. That was last weekend, and that is the first time in Pep Guardiola's managerial history that he's lost 4 games in a row. So Toby, what is going wrong at Manchester City?
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the season, we wouldn't have thought we would have had them in this sort of video. It's felt like they were carrying on how they were playing last season. Things were going well. They were picking up good results. And now, yeah, in these last 4 games, it really feels to have flipped. And it's nothing drastic. It's nothing major. It's not a season-ending run for Manchester City. Nowhere near that. And it's certainly things that I think they have struggled in the past, and things that they have also rectified in the past. And I think the problems maybe that have happened in these last few games are things that Pep Guardiola will be able to work on over this international break, which is very well timed for him, and will able to get them back on track and winning as we expect them. Yeah, these last few weeks, it definitely feels like there has been a slight shift in that intensity, and a slight shift, I think, in their defensive setup. I think is the main issue, whether that's pressing from the front or how they're sort of set up to teams that are countering them. It feels like that rest defense is not quite structured as well as it has been, and I guess maybe the obvious possible cause of why that structure isn't there as well is the main man in the middle being missing at the moment.
You're talking about Rodri, aren't you?
Yeah, of course. A huge blow for Man City. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure. And yeah, because Man City have a handful of injuries at the moment, which are maybe contributing to that because of the fact that Pep Guardiola likes to rotate his players. And so in the rest defense, maybe they're not quite up to it in the press because no one's as fresh as they used to be. But yeah, of course, Rodri is a massive blow to that. And I think he was maybe, he was so integral to that Man City side. But I think we did see at the start of the season, in the first 3 games, where Pep Guardiola decided that, you know what, Rodri, one of the best players at the Euros, got player of the tournament, I think it was. Let's give him a bit of a rest and let's integrate him into the start of the season. And they won all 3 games at the beginning of the season. So it is, despite the fact that Rodri is a crucial player. You take him at best midfield out of any team, they're going to struggle. I mean, just look at Arsenal with Martin Odegaard as well. Look at how well they've been doing with him, and look at how badly they've been doing without him. But Rodri, I think Man City can win without him. It's just like you said. I think for me, it's the formation that Pep Guardiola is playing, especially I think maybe in possession and under possession. I think he likes to, whatever you see Man City lined up on paper, that's not normally how they guard and play. I think in possession, you normally see Man City in a 3-1-6. That's a bit of a change to like a 3-2-5 or a 2-3-5 that we saw from last season. So they've got one less player back. So they've got 4 now in the 3-1 rather than 5 in the 3-2 or the 2-3. And for me, when you just have that single player, at the beginning of the season, is Mateo Kovacic worked perfectly well. He actually looked really good in that role. But for me now, when you're getting games thick and fast, and you really need someone to be press proof, and then when they press to, make that 50-50 more like a 80-20 in their favor, you need someone of the caliber of Rodri, and they just don't have that. So can they try and replace him with someone else? It's highly unlikely, or maybe perhaps they need to have a whole system shift.
Yeah, and Kovacic I think is a fair replacement for Rodri in certain aspects. He's really good, as you said, in terms of ball retention and press resistance, and he is able to keep that ball moving. It's the defensive side, I think, where Rodri's intelligence and how he can read the game and break up any potential counter attacks and be not a quarterback, because he's not the one distributing sort of those long balls over the top or anything like that. But being that metronome, I guess, in terms of dictating the speed at which Man City are defending, the speed at which they're attacking. And I think those are 2 aspects where it really has dropped recently. And when they're attacking and moving that ball around, it can feel a little bit slow, a little bit hesitant. And when those players who are going to be picking out those really key passes, like your Bernardo Silva and your Phil Foden, by the time they get the ball, it feels like the defence that they're facing has already shifted around enough and blocked out any potential sort of final balls or through balls that you expect them to pick out. Whereas I think when you have Rodri in there, the speed in which he keeps moving the ball, keeps shifting that back line around, gives those really, really creative players just that fraction of a second more time to pick out a pass. And And it really does feel like they've missed him in that attacking sense as well, not just in that defensive sense.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think it's a bit like, when certain players, I hate the word, I do, but when certain players have an aura about them. I think obviously for a few years, Virgil van Dijk has had it where, any player runs at them and they don't even bother. They just can't slow down and wait for their teammates because they know they're not going to beat them. I think Rodri has that, but in terms of other midfielders and attackers trying to press him, I think they go, oh God, it's Rodri. Do I have to go and get him? And I think that one split second in at the professional level is such a huge difference that Rodri just always has time and space. Yes, it's him being intelligent. Yes, it's him always constantly finding the space and then the ability to turn and make a pass really, really quickly. But I also think it's the fact that other teams the opposition just know, I don't want to press him. I don't want to press him because I'm going to press him. He's going to release the ball and then I've got to run back. So I may as well just cut that out. And I think with other players now, with the way Man City have been playing and the lack of pace in the attack, but also maybe even the lack of physicality in the midfield. I do think that that's very underrated in Rodri's game because, yeah, Gundogan, Kovacic, who else they got in there? Rico Lewis, Bernardo Silva. I think they all lack a little bit of physicality in there, which Rodri brings. So I think, look, is it something which Rodri will fix when he comes back? Yes, absolutely. But Man City have a whole season which they need to go in and they need to try and, win league titles, win the Champions League. So how are they going to do it, Tobes?
Yeah, big question, big question, big question. I think the way that their defense is setting up can certainly be tweaked. I think to account for Rodri being missing. It feels like when they're lining up with Akanji, Walker, Rico Lewis, I really, really rate all these players, and I think they bring certain things, but I just don't think, especially this season, defensively, they have been good enough. I think Rico Lewis is an incredible young player, but he's not the strongest defensively. I think Akanji is really, really good on the ball and can really step forward into that midfield role and bring things forward. But again, I don't think he's the best defensively. And I think, again, another player that they are probably missing to be in that centre-back role is Ruben Diaz, who at times for Manchester City really felt like the one true defender I think that they would normally have in that back line, the one who would lead the line and the one who would do most of the defending and sort of let the progression and the other sides of the game that those players bring shine a little bit more, and he would almost do the dirty work, I guess. So I think they need to line up maybe just in that defence a little bit more conservatively and potentially even pushing one of those defenders into Rodri's position, someone like an Akanji or Stones, and instead of them being the player who steps up into that midfield, maybe just starting them in midfield from the start potentially. Obviously, it's going to hamper their attack potentially, losing a midfielder and playing a defender there. But it's something that could be worth trying, maybe.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I think from my perspective, I think of it and think like you got Gundogan, Silva, Lewis, Kovacic. I think they need a bit more recovery pace in there. I think that's something that they sorely lack because on a counter-attack, even Adama Traore just running at Kyle Walker the other day in the Fulham versus Man City game, I just think of that and just think, I mean, a couple of years ago, no one's running at Kyle Walker, and not only that, no one's beating Kyle Walker. So I think they do lack, apart from him, a little bit of pace in that back line. I think Gavardio's great, and I think that if he were to, you can maybe put him in that back three, but I would, you could potentially move him into that midfield. And then not only do you have the physicality, but you've also got the recovery pace. Is he good enough on the ball? I think so. He's mainly showed it out wide on the left wing and then also in and around the attacking area. But in midfield, it is different. I mean, I think personally, if you've got a midfield who's got the physicality, then I think that'd be ideal. For me, there's a shout that you could chuck in Mateus Nunes in there. I think it's a player who they signed from Wolves. He's been playing out on the left wing, but I think he's only there at the moment because you got the likes of Doku who's injured and Jack Grealish as well. But I think this could be a time, a player who is a natural midfielder, you bought him as a midfielder, play him in midfield and play him alongside a Kovacic, let's say, and then you don't take away that you don't take away that attacking quality you have on the ball. Yes, he might not be as good or as technical as some of the other Man City midfielders, but it's more about off the ball. He can press, he's got that high energy, and running back, he can make those recovery runs. For me, potentially, is Mateus Nunes. It's not the worst shot, is it?
No, I think that is a good shout, and I think he certainly is a different type of player to Kovacic to have in there. But I still just think, even if they're both playing there, there's no presence really. I think if teams are coming up against Manchester City and they beat that first line of press, which I think we saw Sporting do really, really well when they played it around Man City, and then it feels like when it gets to a point of Man City, when you're in that middle third past the majority of their press and you're running at them, that's where the real danger is. And I still think if teams are lining up and seeing Nunez and Kovacic, either one or both of them in there, they're going to be thinking, if we can get past that press, that is not good cover for the defence, and there is still missing physicality in there. And that's why I think they may. I think they should. Personally, I would go either Nunez or Kovacic. I think they both do the job, and I like the shout of Nunez in midfield because, again, when he was at Sporting, I'm pretty sure he was at before Wolves, he played centrally and was exceptional. I just think maybe John Stones alongside him. I think he really could do that role and do it really well. Not as well as Rodri, which is why I think maybe he needs one of those players alongside him. But yeah, I don't know why Stones isn't really playing that much this season. I think he can really bring a lot, and I think he could fix a few problems in there.
Yeah, I think the thing is with Stones, you can't really trust his injury record though anymore because he's constantly in the side and he's constantly out of it. But then part of that is his injuries. I mean, he's not. I don't think he's in the November internationals with England at the moment. Gay Konza. No, he's not. He's not going with England, so he's injured out right now. Something I probably should check before we click record. But he's out injured right now, and then you don't know if he's going to be fit or not. So then you're relying on John Stones, but then if he's out injured, then what do you do? You're back to square one, aren't you? I think Man City.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, like you say, you can't change a system based on one injury-prone player, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you're a team down the bottom of the table, then yeah, of course you can do that because that one player might be your best player, and therefore you're trying to accommodate them no matter what. But for Man City, I think they need a more permanent solution, and dare I say it, is the permanent solution just to go out and buy someone in January?
I mean, yeah, it doesn't feel like they have a natural Rodri replacement, a Rodri backup, really. And I think these last few games have probably shown that. So it wouldn't be crazy maybe if they went and picked up. It's going to be one end of the spectrum, you would imagine, probably a young player who would be happy sort of developing there, or an older player at the end of the career knowing it's only a short-term sort of backup.
I've heard rumors about Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad, who I think like every top club in Europe are looking at and monitoring, and I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised he hasn't moved. He didn't want to move this summer to Liverpool, but I mean, if they get him, is that just that just feels a bit like cheating, isn't it? That is pretty much the perfect Rodri replacement.
Pretty much, yeah. Super similar player, very good player, physical, composed, would slot in there and be absolutely perfect. So yeah, it would be cheating. It would really, yeah.
Yeah, God, let's hope for the rest of the league that they don't do that. But if we're being honest, we're criticizing a Man City team managed by Pep Guardiola, and yes, they're in the bad run of form, but still arguably one of the greatest managers of all time. And so, do you know what? No matter what happens, I'm sure Pep will find a way. And maybe the November international break is coming at a perfect time because you go away, you get some of your players back fit after that, and then maybe they're just back to normal. So, this could be a completely futile conversation.
Yeah, or Pep will pull out some massive, mega big brain thing. He'll play Haaland in the 6 and it will somehow be incredible, and then they'll go on a 10-game winning run. So
there we go. Haaland in the 6. Take him out of your FPL team. You've heard it here first. We'll move on then from Manchester City to Tottenham Hotspur, who are in 10th place at the moment on 16 points, not where they probably expect to find themselves. And in the last few games, they have not had the best of form. And I think we find ourselves here with Spurs yet again, where we're asking about consistency. When I looked at the league table and looked at the form guide, they lost one, won one, lost one, lost. And I think that's pretty much Spurs in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so frustrating because they are really, really good at times. They are, I think, still one of the best teams going forward in the league at times. And it must be so incredibly frustrating being a Spurs fan, knowing that even if they play well and they're keeping this up, they're still not always picking up results. I mean, they're second in the league overall for XG, second in the league overall for goals. And even defensively, it doesn't feel like a huge issue. I mean, they've conceded one more goal than Arsenal and the same amount of goals as City. So it's definitely not like they're a super poor side defensively at all. But yeah, it still feels like there are aspects of both sides of that game that could be improved and maybe improved in certain games or at certain moments. So it's a weird one. It's a weird one with Spurs, as it always is.
Yeah, that's the thing because yeah, they scored. I mean, think about it. They scored 23 goals, conceded 13. You look at that and think, okay, do you know what? They must be higher up in the table. And the table in that upper middle bit around the European places is so tight that one more win and they could literally be third, and we might not be having this conversation. But I think, yeah, the issue is the consistency because they'll go and smash team 4-0, or like they did with Everton earlier in the season, like they beat Aston Villa only a couple of weeks ago 4-1. But then they'll have like a dodgy result where they lose 2-1 to Ipswich, and it is just that you half the battle is just winning the games you're meant to win. And if Spurs can get that right, then they'll find themselves, exactly where they want to be in the European places, competing for the Champions League. And then the little extra bit is beating the good teams who are in and around you, like the likes of Manchester City, who they have after the international break, who after their wouldn't even be surprised if they go and beat Man City, because that's the kind of side they are. They literally beat them in the League Cup. So it is a really weird one. For me, I think it's a mixture of things because I think while their attack is one of the best in the league, I don't think that it just they have one of the best attacks in the league, but I still look at that attack and I still think there's more to come for them. And in defense, I think I've said it, it's like the back five, one fit of Vicario, Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, and Doji are all really, really good players individually. But for some reason, put them together in Ange Postecoglou's side, they don't work well. And the midfield, Ange is constantly chopping and changing. One moment he's playing Basuma in the 6th, the next he's in the 8th, the next he's not even in the team. 1 second it's Madison in the 10, then it's Kulusevski, who I think has done really well so far this season. But then it's Kulusevski back out to the right, and it's not even Madison, and it's one of the youngsters. It's Bentancur's in 1 week, Bentancur's not in this 1 week. There's so much rotation, and I really can't put my finger on it. I can point to things being like, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. But one outstanding thing, I think it is just a mixture of everything.
Yeah, and I definitely think that in terms of personnel, that's a really good point. When you look at that squad, all the players are good, but there's not one player, I don't think, where you can imagine them really picking the game up by the scruff of their neck. If Spurs are down, if they're not playing well, or if they're in the last 15, 20 minutes, and who are all those players looking at to really be the one who sort of lifts them? And it doesn't really feel like Spurs have that. It doesn't really feel like there are many natural leaders in the side. I mean, like Son and Solanke and Madison and Van de Ven and Porro. I really, really rate all of them, but it doesn't feel like they have that sort of those leadership qualities that I think you need, that the top teams need from their top players. And I think that certainly could be a reason maybe why at times they just drop off. And I think when one player drops off, another does, and then it does feel like the whole team sort of starts to drop a little bit. And they get these periods in games where they need those leaders to pick everyone up and go, right, come on, what are we doing here? Because looking at their last 3 losses, it's really shocking how quickly those games have fallen apart for Spurs, and those are games that they should have won. In the Ipswich game, they conceded 2 goals in 13 minutes. In the Galatasaray game, 2 goals in 8 minutes, or 3 in 30 minutes. And the Brighton game, 3 goals in 18 minutes. And it's those moments, those laps of concentration, those moments where they need their big names and their big players to step up. And it's 15, 20 minutes of the game that throws it away, that completely throws it away. So what and what, like how do they keep doing that?
I don't know. Because to back up your point about saying like how it's in clusters, I've got a side that says Spurs have the joint lowest amount of shots on target against them with 36 in the Premier League, and they're level with Man City and Liverpool. So the goals, when they do come, are in clusters. but the shots that they have against their own goal aren't that often. But when they do, it's clinical and they come in clusters. And so that to me just shows concentration. Is it as simple as concentration? Because again, like you said, like Vicario, Porro, Van der Ven, Romero, I look at a side who, on paper, the starting 11 is all right. But then I also think they turn over the ball too easily. I mean, I've got another one for you. They Spurs in terms of take-ons, they attempt the most of any Premier League side in the league, but they're actually the fourth lowest when it comes to successful take-ons, which to me shows that they've got players who like to dribble the ball, like to take on their man, but they don't do that effectively when they do. And I think, maybe I don't want to criticize him because he has been a wonderful player, arguably a Premier League legend. But I think it was time for Spurs to maybe move past Heung-min Son in the summer. Not necessarily sell him and replace him, but I think in terms of getting a replacement who's viable for that position and someone who, can learn from Son this season and then take his place next year. And I look at, Wilson Odobert, maybe, but he just got relegated with Burnley. He looks like a really good player, if I'm being honest, though. But then also you got Timo Werner, who's just on loan, but that's not going to be working. You got Brennan Johnson, who I do like, but he's inconsistent. He's not out of form, then he is in form, and when he's in form, he's amazing. So you're very confused. There's just a lot of jigsaw pieces that don't seem to fit the puzzle, and I'm not quite sure what it is, because maybe you can say it is the transfers, maybe it's the recruitment, maybe it's Ange and the system, maybe it's the owners, maybe it's Daniel Levy and the group that hired the managers, because they've had a plethora of failures not just before Ange, and we're still undetermined about Ange. I think we're all waiting for the side to be like, okay, come on, here's the next stage. I am still patient on Ange. I still am Spurs should absolutely stick with him, but it's this inconsistency which at some point needs to be stamped out, and individual errors don't help either. And I think it's just a really weird time to be looking on at Spurs, because you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think with Spurs as well, I think it probably is all tied to the way that they play, potentially. I think we know it's very, very intense. It's very high press. When they have the ball, they move it really quickly, even when they have possession in the final third, sort of knocking it around, say a deep low block. They're still moving it super, super quick. They are still trying all of these take-ons, and it must be absolutely knackering, and it must be so intense physically and also so intense mentally, I think, having to concentrate that hard with all of these different aspects of Ange's game, with almost all of the players being involved in the build-up and stepping up. And that could just be a sacrifice of his system, that there are going to be times when they're going to be knackered getting towards the end of that first half, maybe coming out of the break and not being switched on, because it does feel like it's that middle third of the game is where they do struggle, and then later on they get a bit of a second wind. And maybe it is just turning that down from 11 just down to a 9 could just be enough, and maybe stamp out a few of those errors. And I don't think that would really compromise their play style and the positives that they show. I think if they just take it down a little bit and maybe have a little bit more game management, knowing that they're not going to be pressing and going crazy all the time. And I think we see that with a lot of the top teams after sort of the 20-minute mark, they tend to have maybe a 5-10 minute break where the press isn't so intense, to then be able to pick it up for the last 10-15 minutes of that first half. And I think maybe that's something that they could also bring in.
Yeah, I think we really need to wait and see till the end of the season to really evaluate Spurs. But while you were talking, I've just quickly done the maths, and I think for me the point on improvement, you can really tell rather than league position, because I think sometimes 70 can get you 6, sometimes 70 can get you in top 4. So I look at points. And Spurs last season got 66 points. And so at the current rate, Spurs will end up on around 55. So that is a drop off by 10 points. And, if it wasn't for the early season form of Spurs last year in the first 10 games where people were talking about maybe potentially they're in the title race, then, who knows how well we'll be talking about the Spurs side. I just think we still need to give it just a little bit more time, because we spoke since when Ange came in that, Spurs fans were, just wanted more attractive attacking football, because they were bored of it under Nuno, Mourinho and Conte, and they just wanted to see some goals and be entertained. They've got that. I think not only Spurs fans, I think all of us are genuinely entertained watching Spurs, but now they need to find that consistency. And I think even if it's just later on this season, I think Ange needs to be given at least a full year. But not only that, they're in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. They got Man United. I think they're at home as well in that one. They're also in the Europa League, one of the favourites of the Europa League. So I think we can really evaluate Spurs by the end of it. I do think, though, that, come next season, there'll be talking points around Spurs and Ange, and there'll be no place for him to hide this time next year. But let's move on then from Spurs to Aston Villa, who are just one place ahead of them in the Premier League table in ninth. Last 4 games, they lost 2-1 to Crystal Palace in the League Cup. They lost 4-1 to Spurs in the game we mentioned away in the league. They lost 1-0 to Club Brugge in the Champions League. After that, I don't even know what it was. Tyrone Mings, atrocious handball. I don't know what he was thinking. And then on the last weekend, they lost 2-0 away to Liverpool. Is this just a bad bit of form at the moment, or is there something more serious to worry about, Tobes?
Yeah, I think it's a similar position, I think, to City. I mean, if we would have looked 5 games ago, say, before the 1-1 Bournemouth draw as well, I think we would have thought they'd have had a really good start to the season and carried on a lot of that form from last season. They were bossing it in the Champions League, still picking up a decent amount of points in the Prem, and it was looking like they were going to be battling for that top 4 again. I don't think there was too much doubt about that. And now this 4 losses in a row, winless in 5, and it does feel like there is a little blip here that has put a bit of a dent in their season, and one that they're going to have to recover from. And yeah, they've scored 17, they've conceded 17. It feels like they are conceding a few too many goals and maybe just not scoring enough, or at least not scoring at the rate that they were last season. It does feel like their attacking output hasn't been as creative and as efficient. I don't think there's one sort of key point there. It just definitely feels like that attacking firepower has been restricted a little bit. So yeah, both ends and maybe just their all-round play in the last few games especially hasn't quite been as good as it has really at the start of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I think they just look a little bit tired, if I'm honest. I mean, you think about the players that they have up front. I mean, Ollie Watkins didn't really get a pre-season. I think his pre-season was literally the first game of the season because he was all the way to the final with England in the Euros. Then Emery decided to rest him. He decided not to, give him the games off, and he decided he needed to play him straight from week 1. And he did have some very early start of the season misses that were quite obvious. I think there was a couple in that game against Arsenal. I mean, yeah, you could say David Raya made a fantastic save, the diving header. I think we all know what it was. But you could also say that, Ollie Watkins should be scoring that. There was one in that game where he also put wide. So he hasn't looked like the Ollie Watkins of last season. And I think that's the thing. We're comparing Aston Villa this season to the Aston Villa of last season, which reached an exceptional level, who were comfortably in the top 4 by the end of it. Not necessarily in terms of points, but in terms of the performances, they just looked like a top 4 side. They were managed like they were a top 4 side. And I think in our expectations, we all expect, I expect Aston Villa to get the top 4 this season. And if they just look a little bit leggy, I think you just have to give them that. I mean, I think in terms of going forward, I think there is a massive emphasis on Morgan Rogers, and I think maybe a little bit too much, considering the fact that he's still just a young lad. It's his first full season in the Premier League, after he joined from Middlesbrough last January. And when you think about the creativity, it's Watkins up top, it's Morgan Rogers just a little bit behind him. Bailey's kind of a little bit out of form on the right, and then on the left, whether it's McGinn or whether it's Jacob Ramsey, they're in and out. It's not quite working at the moment. It's not quite clicking in the last few games especially, and that's really highlighted it to us, and that's why we're talking about it. But I do think that maybe the international break, a bit like with Man City, has come at the right time.
Yeah, and it feels like with sort of like Rodgers coming in and the loss of Luiz and Diaby obviously being sold, and I think Kamara being injured, there's been quite a lot of change in that midfield. And I think the players who have come in, like you said, like Rodgers and Tielemans and Onana, I think they're all really, really good players. I just think they're very different, I think, what was there to last year. And maybe this sort of transition period with these new players, I think, has sort of come about in these recent games, really. I think Rodgers plays maybe a little bit too close to Ollie Watkins. Not that that's a combination that couldn't work, but I just think the way that we saw Villa play last season, where Watkins was very much sort of on the last man, stretching the play, seeing those balls over from really deep from Luiz or deep from the fullbacks or Kamara. And it feels like they've sort of changed the season where Tielemans and Onana, I think, are players who are a lot more comfortable sort of on the ball, driving forward, playing quicker passes, shorter passes, a lot more dynamic players and a lot more of a dynamic pivot than we saw with Luiz and Kamara. And the same with Rodgers. He's someone who likes to pick up the ball and drive. And I think without Watkins sort of stretching that play and making those runs in beyond, the creative side of Watkins' game has gone quite a bit, and it's now just reliant on his sort of final third play and his finishing. And I think that side of their creativity, I don't want to say it's gotten worse. I just think it's changed and is transitioning a little bit, and that's why at the moment they're only 12th in the league for XG, and I think those creative numbers are just a result of that system change, really.
Yeah, but I also think with Morgan Rodgers, the point you made about him maybe being too close to Ollie Watkins, I would say though, I think that's his game and that's where he works best. So I think even if he were to drop a bit deeper, like you suggest, I just don't think it suited him. And I don't, he's a young lad. I don't blame that on him. That's something that he can maybe develop later on. But I just don't think it's him. I think I can maybe look at that squad and go, maybe Emi Buendia, but he's picked up, he's come back from a long-term injury. He's out for the entirety of last season. But not only that, have Aston Villa maybe moved past him a little bit? I know that's maybe harsh to say because he was so good for them before he got injured. But, time moves, what's the saying? Time stands still for no one, that's it. And so maybe that's the case for Emi Buendia as well. Yeah, I do know what you mean about Douglas Luiz. I think, maybe more of a miss than we thought. But yeah, I do. It is weird because I looked at Diaby leaving in the summer, and I looked at who was the young lad from Jadon Philogene coming in from Hull City, who Villa did have on their books previously, and they re-signed him. I did look at that and go, well, on paper, the numbers he got in the Championship, that should be able to translate pretty well to the Premier League. And Diaby didn't quite settle in as well. Maybe he needed to be given more time, but I thought maybe I'd see more from him. I haven't quite seen that much from him. I think maybe also Ian Maatsen. Could you maybe try him in a more advanced role? I mean, where would I put him? Would I put him left wing, right wing? Maybe just try it. I don't know, because you seem to be getting loads of goals and assists at Borussia Dortmund, doing really well in a more advanced role at times as well. Maybe that could be an option. So I think there are solutions going forward in that attacking sense. I just think that, yeah, it's not quite clicking at the moment. It's not quite there, but I think it will be. In terms of the defence, do you think the defence has been good enough so far this season? They conceded how many goals? What have they conceded? Conceded 13 goals this season, which is as expected according to XG against. But it does look like there's a little bit more fragility. They do seem a little bit more easy to guard at. Maybe that's the midfield again, or do you think that's just a defence?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on Rodgers and what you said there, that I don't want it to come across that I don't like Rodgers or that I don't think he fits in the system. I absolutely love Morgan Rodgers. I think he's such a good player and he's so good to watch. And I think he can do a lot. It was more just, I think, having Rodgers in there just maybe takes away from some of Watkins' strengths that we saw last season. I definitely think those two players are good enough to work together and adapt a little bit to maybe just get a bit more combination going between them, and that would be really, really deadly. And I think, that's just maybe a little fix that they could do. Defensive.
Oh wait, let me ask you then, mate. No, let's carry on that because I completely forgot. In the summer, Aston Villa wanted João Felix, and I can't remember the exact number. I remember the three numbers. I don't know which order. So it's either 118 or 181, but that's the amount of minutes that João Felix had played this season. And it was heavily reported that Unai Emery wanted him. Do you think that he would have solved the issues, and then Morgan Rodgers, if he wasn't the ideal fit at the right time and he's a young player who might be in and out of form, you can maybe move him out wide to the left or the right. That might solve your wide issues as well, and then you can bring in João Felix or maybe just put him to the bench. Do you think Felix would have solved the issues?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think João Felix would be a good player to have in their squad, definitely, because I think he is different to Rodgers. He would be someone who would be more sort of synced towards the defence's back line and less so sort of picking up and directly running at them, more sort of picking up a lot further forward, and could see a little bit more, I guess, combination with Watkins. I think that would be a good player to have. I still wouldn't take Morgan Rodgers out of that squad despite what I've said, and I still wouldn't take Watkins out. I just think they need a bit more time sort of playing together centrally, and at times, I think Rodgers played out left quite a bit last season, or almost played next to Watkins, which I think is shows how versatile he is, and that they could change the system a little bit depending on how the game is going. Because their attack has felt not stale at times, but could do with someone like Diaby last season, or as you said, Felix this season, sort of coming on and mixing things up a little bit.
I think stale is probably fair enough, though, if I'm being honest. I think I was looking at Leon Bailey against Andrew Robertson on the weekend in the Liverpool Villa game. And I just thought, okay, big call by Arne Slot to play Robertson because Tsimikas has done really, really well. And there's now a discussion being had in the Liverpool fan base that maybe Tsimikas has usurped Robertson in that place. He decided, no, I'm going to go with Robertson this game. And, everyone went, okay, fair enough. And I looked at Leon Bailey and I went, okay, let's see what you're on about. Let's see what you're made of. And he just didn't run at Robertson. He didn't have a go at him. It just seemed like Robertson had him on toast. Robertson kept on running past him, and then Leon Bailey was constantly chasing him, constantly seeing the back of his shirt rather than the front. And I would say it was a little bit stale. I think the set pieces looked like a big area of threat. I think Pau Torres had that one where Conor Bradley pulled him, which on another day a referee would give that as a penalty. I think Onana from set pieces is really, really crucial. But I think in open play, they do look a little bit stale. I think they lack a little bit of pace. I think Bailey's quick, McGinn's quick, Rodgers, everyone, they're all quick, but I don't see anyone rapid. And Diaby was that. Bailey not in form. So I think it's fair to say they maybe are a bit stale.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that sort of pace and running in behind that we saw last season has been, as I said, that pivot changing from Luiz and Kamara to Tielemans and Onana. A lot less long balls statistically, a lot less through balls as well, and I think they're not moving that ball, I think, from back to front quickly and maybe transitioning to something with a little bit more control, which is understandable and isn't necessarily a bad change, and in the long term, at the moment it's not quite clicking, and with that change in pivot as well, I think with Kamara being injured and being missed, as you said, defensively, I think that has provided them a little less cover, and not as strong last season as they were, certainly defensively, as they are at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely not. Okay, yeah, I think we've thoroughly covered Aston Villa there, so let's move on to Crystal Palace, who causing a lot of people headaches, especially those who predicted them at the beginning of the season to be a lot higher up in the table than they currently are. Currently in 18th place in the Premier League, only on 7 points, 1 point off the relegation zone, and I think we have to start with the forward line because it's not been great, has it, mate?
No, their defence not really an issue at all. They've conceded 15 goals this season, which is sort of middle of the pack. They haven't conceded more than 2 goals in any game this season. But going forward, it's been shocking. It has been really, really poor from Palace. Second lowest scorers in the league and the biggest underperformers of XG in the league by some stretch. I think it's over 6 goals they're underperforming compared to their XG. And even then, the XG numbers themselves aren't great. Not creating enough and not taking those chances when they get them. A double whammy of their attack that really needs fixing to turn their fortunes around.
Yeah, it's all just gone so badly wrong, and I do feel really sorry if you're an Eagles fan because 12th season in the Premier League now, you would maybe hope that your club were a little bit higher up in the table, and especially if you're looking at your rivals in Brighton and you're looking at how well they're doing, coming off the weekend beating Manchester City. You look at them and you're probably looking like really enviously and thinking, oh, I wish we could be more like them. I don't think any Crystal Palace fan will probably admit that though, but I think there is probably a hint of jealousy there, and I completely understand it because it's not been good enough. And I think it does feel like a cycle that's repeating itself again. You hire a new manager who comes in, does really well, and then you give them the summer and then the full season. They end up not doing really great, and then you end up sacking them and you bring someone else in. And it just seemed like a little bit of a cycle at the moment. And obviously we know how good Oliver Glasner is a manager, how good this Crystal Palace side can be. But is it now to the point, especially with the forwards, where it's just not quite clicking and something has to change? Because I look at Jean-Philippe Mateta, didn't really have much of a preseason, and that's actually something that Oliver Glasner keeps coming out and keeps saying. But I don't think he can keep coming out and say that because it kind of reminded me a bit of Erik ten Hag now saying, oh, we won 2 trophies, leave me alone, it's all about winning, we won 2 trophies. I'm like, enough, I was fed up with that. And I think I'm getting to the same point with Oliver Glasner where I'm like, we had no preseason. I'm like, cool. You had no preseason, but you're 11 games into the season, so your players at least now should be fit to start performing now. And yeah, it's not been great. Jean-Philippe Mateta only 3 goals, Mark Gay only 2 goals, Eze 1, Chalobah 1, and that's all the Crystal Palace goals this season. It's not been good enough, and it really, really doesn't look like it's going to be improving anytime soon.
Yeah, and it does feel like it's too obvious to say that they're missing Mikel Elise, but they really are. And I think the players that have come in to replace him are very, very different and nowhere near as creative either. I mean, the players who seem to be playing in that position behind the striker is Eddie Nketiah, Kamada, or Ismail Assar, who I think Nketiah, as an Arsenal fan, I really wanted him to do well. I wanted him to go to another club and perform, but I just don't think his style of play as a striker really works as a striker anymore. I don't think he can play behind the striker. I don't think he's got sort of the creative quality to do so, and he is an out-and-out striker, but then I also don't think he really brings much build-up play. And he is just kind of that old school in the box finisher. And I think if he is going to play, he needs to play up front on his own instead of Mateta. I think Mateta brings a little bit more in terms of sort of aerial and hold up play and combination. So I think him playing behind the striker is really weird, and it was a strange signing looking at it now. And Kamada, I think, isn't too dissimilar, really. I think he isn't particularly creative. I think he's a really efficient player. But again, I think playing him behind the striker doesn't really offer Mateta much really to sort of feed off. And I think that over-reliance maybe on the creativity now on Eze is just too much. And they don't really have the players, I think, to support Mateta and create enough chances in this team. And maybe some sort of a system change is needed, possibly.
Yeah, maybe, but that's the way, as far as I know, that Oliver Glasner's always played.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
He did that at Frankfurt. I don't know. I don't know where he was before Frankfurt, if I'm being honest. I can't think of it from the top of my head. But I think, I think you said it. Elise is a massive miss, but I think not only his miss in the attack, but I think Daniel Munoz down that right wing back position, he doesn't look as good as he did last season now. And you can say that for every single Crystal Palace player, but I think especially going forward, I think it was a case of, when your right wing back, just give the ball to your right winger, let him do everything, and you just play around them. And then when you get a good chemistry, and it's always you two, maybe you can, cover for the deficiencies that you have, because they attract so many players like Elise was, that anytime Munoz got the ball, that, he was a bit more space and a bit more time around it to make decisions, but he just doesn't look great going forward anymore. I think I maybe expected an improvement from Mitchell going forward, which I haven't quite seen yet. I was optimistic that, a manager like Glasner could get that out of him, but it hasn't quite been there. And then you look at the Crystal Palace squad as a whole, half of them are defenders. Over half of them are defenders, and you're trying to find out how to score goals, so you have even less options than you did before. And with Eze injured, and the new signings not being fit and getting injured themselves and not working out, it has just culminated in this, whatever this is so far this season, which hasn't been acceptable. Remind me, how much did Arsenal sell Nketiah for? Do you remember?
25 million. So it's a big signing, really.
Yeah, but I think at the start of the season, I think we all thought the signings were good. So you can't just turn bad overnight. I mean, maybe we all thought Nketiah was a good player, right? I think maybe for Crystal Palace, he was the wrong type of striker. Maybe they needed someone like Mateta, a bit of a holder man who's going to link up play and get other players involved, and Nketiah just isn't that. I look at Kamada, and to me, I always thought of Kamada as, as a backup to Mikel Elise, Eberechi Eze, when he's out injured, that is a fantastic backup to have, And then Sarr just hasn't quite worked out. Maybe he's a player who's best off the bench, bringing a bit of pace. But then I think you can just say you haven't replaced Mikel Elise, but it's so hard to replace Mikel Elise because he's, arguably top 5 right wingers in world football. And so if you were able to replace him, then you would have, wouldn't you? But not only that, also Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United, everyone would have gone for that kind of player. So it is just a really, really bad one. How do they go about changing it? Do you think it is just system?
Yeah, I just think maybe they need to tweak it sounds really negative, but almost tweak it to their strong suit at the moment, which is their defence. Sort of looking at Gahey and Chalobah, and Mitchell, I think, is definitely more naturally a defender. I don't know exactly what that switch would entail. Whether maybe they would be better off going back to a 4-back, with still having Wharton and Hughes sitting in front of them as protection, and having Eze, I think, in the 10 as opposed to sort of being really like right behind the striker. I think would maybe enable them to pick up that ball from the defence into the attack a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently, create some more chances. Have Sarr out as sort of an out-and-out right mid, Mateta up front, and then maybe Kamada off the left or something of that ilk. Could maybe, I think, just lean towards their strength defensively. And as you said, I don't think Munoz has been quite effective enough this season, and maybe having Klein in at right back, who's a lot more solid if they go to a 4-back. I think we'll just solidify things a little bit more. And yeah, they might not score as many goals or continue scoring at the rate that they are, but I think leaning more towards that defence, they'll be a bit more solid, so might balance that out a little bit, because at the moment I can't really see how they're going to score too many goals with the way they're playing.
Yeah, for me it's get Eze fit, get him back into the side, and I don't know, just persist and hope Mateta ends up scoring a few more goals. Try and find a way to get Nketiah in and around the box a bit more. Something of that ilk. Maybe change from a 3-4-3 to maybe a 3-5-2. And so Eze is your most advanced midfielder, and then you play a front two of Nketiah and Mateta, something like that. But
yeah, I'd like that. That would be a good. That could be a good combo. Yeah,
something like that. But I guess if you're crying out for Jordan Ayew to come back to your club, he was 32, 33 when he joined Leicester. I mean, yeah, that pretty much sums it up now, doesn't it? Let's move on then to Southampton, 20th in the league, only 4 points, 4 points off safety. Are they just a bad side or anything that they can improve on, Tobes?
I think they're a very good side tactically if they were a better team, if that makes any sense. I mean, because you look at their stats, they've got the second most passes in the league. They're fourth for possession. They have decent enough XG, I think, to keep them up. I think it's 15th or 16th in the league. But where that possession is, where those touches are, and the problems that's causing them is a really big issue. I mean, they have the most defensive errors in the league this season, over 1 per 90. And the touches that they're having, I mean, so if you look at the areas, for touches in the defensive penalty area, they're second in the league. Defensive third, they're first in the league. And middle third, they're third in the league. Whereas as soon as you move that into attack, it completely drops. The attacking third touches, 12th in the league, and attacking penalty area touches, they're 16th in the league. So they're doing a lot right. They're just not really doing it in the right areas and moving it into those right areas well enough. And it's just causing them to not score enough, and it's causing them to concede way too many, because they're just allowing teams that when they do win the ball and tackle Southampton, they're already there and ready to score. So these tactics maybe in principle could work for a side, just not for Southampton for me.
Yeah, I think I agree. But then, like you said, they're not getting it into that final third. But when they do, they're the lowest for shots on target in the whole league, and they're second lowest for shots in general. So, yeah, they're not getting it into the final third, and when they do, they're not creating goal-scoring chances for themselves. So, yeah, it is a very difficult one. It does feel like something needs to change, and for me, I don't necessarily think it is Russell Martin just yet. I think it is, for me, first of all, the system and the way he plays. If he continues to persist with the system and doesn't learn from it, or decides he's going to learn too late, then I think that decision might be forced, and you might have to force, the Southampton board might have to change him. But I look back and I remember 2 seasons ago when Southampton were last in the Premier League, and that season they had Ralph Hasenhüttl at the start, sacked him in November, then had Ruben Sells as temporary manager, then they brought in Nathan Jones, turned out to be a car crash. He got sacked in that February of the same season. Then Ruben Sells came back and took over temporary charge, and then they finally brought in Russell Martin. And so I think Southampton board might just be a little bit scarred from that previous time they were in the Premier League. But not only that, look at the fixtures coming up. They got Liverpool at home, Brighton away, Chelsea at home, Villa away, and Spurs at home. And then after that, which is the 15th of December, then they go through a very, more favourable run of fixtures. I wouldn't say easy because the team bottom of the league, so they'll have no easy fixtures, but a more favourable run from the 15th of December till about the middle of February. So if they were going to sack him, it'd probably be after that. But I think more than anything, I just want to see Southampton be a bit more competitive, and give teams more to worry about in terms of their defence and Southampton's attack. And at the moment, it's just not there. And I think we all see it. I think the only person who doesn't see it is Russell Martin, which is a problem.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where they just need to tweak, maybe go a little bit longer and try and pick up those second balls and then use that possession once they've got it a bit higher. And obviously the team they're up against hasn't got everyone back. And it's really very easy, I think, to defend against Southampton when they have the ball. There's no urgency and there's no sort of really fear in the opponents. And even if they go long a bit, they don't really have a particularly physical side. It doesn't feel like they're going to be causing problems going long. So maybe it's less a case of that, and more a case of just speeding things up, getting it out to their wing backs a little bit quicker, getting it out to their attacking midfielders a little bit quicker, and just moving from that defence to the attack, using that transition a lot quicker rather than just sort of knocking it around the back and it being far too easy to defend against.
Mate, it's speed of play. There's no reason why you can't have the goalkeeper pass it to the centre-back in the penalty area, and then the centre-back goes straight to the midfielder. The midfielder takes, on the first touch, he just swings it round to the wing-back who's down the wing behind the defence. And then if they get there, to put a ball into the box. I mean, that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4 passes, and you could have a shot-creating action from that. So, and people would still see that as good, attractive football. So I think there is the way of play which, stays true to how Southampton want to be, promoting the youth players, playing good football, but they can do it with just a little bit more speed, because even Pep Guardiola adapts to what is required from his team and what is available to him. So if it's not working, you have to change it, and I just hope for Southampton's sake they learn to change it sooner rather than later, because otherwise they might already be down, but otherwise they will definitely be down later on in the league. And someone who is definitely further down in the league is me in our points for the quiz.
Only by 1 point, Mev. Don't be too harsh on yourself. You had a great episode last week with 4 points. And yeah, guess the club. The earlier you guess the club that the players have played for, the more points you get. Currently, it is 22 points for Mev and 23 for myself after 9 rounds. So, would you like to go first or would you like to go second?
I think yours this week is a bit easy, and I think you'll put it quickly, so I'll go first.
Okay, nice. Okay, so Mev, your first player for 5 points is Patrick Kluivert.
Patrick Kluivert. Not... oh, God, I've got my water bottle on my desk. It's shaking. Patrick Kluivert. It is the nerves. I've also got one of those bottles. I don't know if you have these, where it's got on the side. I'll show it to the camera. It's got how much water you should be drinking throughout the day. So it's a litre one, but it's like 8 a.m. get started, 9 a.m. remember your goal, 10 a.m. keep chugging, and 11 a.m. don't give up.
So motivational.
So motivational. It's a bit like me in the quiz. I really needed to keep on going, but keep chugging. Patrick, not his son Justin. Let's go for PSG.
It is not PSG, unfortunately. Your second player for 4 points is Edu.
So I think... Is it Arsenal?
It is not Arsenal, unfortunately. That would be very topical.
Too obvious.
Your third player for 3 points is Nani.
Okay. Nani was Sporting Club de Portugal, because you don't call them Sporting Lisbon. We don't do that. Then it's Man United. Oh God, I've lost my pen. He was also at Juventus, I think, and also Can I go for Galatasaray, please?
It is not Galatasaray, unfortunately. Fourth player, 2 points. João Cancelo.
João Cancelo. Well, Nani wasn't at Barcelona. It wasn't at Man City. It must be. Is it Juventus?
Oh, it's not Juventus, no.
Am I missing a
Your
team?
final player
Oh
for
my
a
god.
singular point is Juan Mata.
Eh? Juan Mata. What? 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 Man United. Can't be Man United. Chelsea. Can't be Chelsea. Oh, okay. Oh, God. Valencia.
For the point, it is Valencia, yes.
Oh dear, that was
Yeah,
bad.
Kluivert had one season there. Edu had, I think, maybe a couple seasons there after Arsenal. Nani, yeah, he had a season or two there. And then João Cancelo, I think, was there for a number of years before he went to
Man
Juventus
City.
or Inter, whichever club he went to before for
Oh.
those. And then, yeah, Juan Mata signed there for United.
Yeah, I think cancel actually. Yeah, Valencia, Inter Milan, Man City, Bayern, Barca, and then wherever he is now,
Is he in the Saudi League? Or have
he
I just
might be in
made
the
that
Saudi
up?
league.
If you don't know, that's normally a good guess.
Yeah, if you don't know, is he over 30? Yeah, probably in the Saudi league. That or the Turkish league.
Yeah,
Anyway, you ready for yours?
I certainly am.
Okay. Your first player for 5 points is Alberto Moreno.
Oh, Alberto Moreno. Where is he now? I saw a picture of him the other day, but I can't remember who he was playing for or what kid it was or whatever. Obviously Liverpool is not going to be there. Maybe he did a bit in Turkey. Probably not. I think Villarreal, maybe. So let's just go for that. Let's go for Villarreal.
It is not Villarreal. Your second player for 4 points is Gianluca Zambrotta.
Zambrotta. Oh, I always get Zambrotta and Belotti mixed up. I'm pretty sure Zambrotta was Barca. Oh, who else did he play for, Zambrotta? Somewhere in the Serie A would make sense as well, obviously. I cannot think of another club for Zambrotta besides Barca. Oh, I should know more. I feel like I've seen his career path as well. Let's go for Barca.
It is not Barcelona, and you'll be glad you said Barcelona because your third player is Pepe Reina.
Oh, okay. And I'm glad I said Villarreal then as well. Pepe Reina. He has got hundreds of clubs. So he's got Bayern Munich. It's a no. He's got Villa. I don't think Moreno's played for Villa, has he? No, Alex Moreno, but not Alberto. Who else has Reina got? Villarreal, like I said. He's done another Spanish team, but I don't know it. Napoli? Yeah, let's try that. Let's try Napoli.
It is not Napoli, I'm
No.
afraid. Your fourth player for 2 points is Nicola Barella.
Barella. I swear he surely has not only played for Inter. Pepe Reina, I don't think's done Inter. Oh, there's going to be must be a Serie A side. Who else has Reina played for? Oh, has Barella played for Fiorentina? Why can I imagine him in a purple kit? Oh, I hate this round. Let's go for Fiorentina.
It is not Fiorentina.
No.
And your last player is Rafael Varane.
I think I know what it is, but I don't even want to say it because if it's wrong, it's so bad.
What are you thinking?
It says obviously it's not United, it's not Real Madrid, it's not going to be the random French team he played for. I'm thinking it's going to be Como, so I'm just going to go for that.
And that is correct. For 1 point, he's
Nice.
got Como.
Oh,
Well
that
done,
didn't even
Tebs.
cross my mind at all. Barella played for
Oh,
Como. What before? Like when he was like a youngster.
no, he was somewhere else, and then he went on loan in 2016.
Ah,
Yeah, and then because at the time, obviously, Como weren't as good, so they're further down the division, so it made sense.
nice.
Yeah,
That was a good one. That was a tough one. I liked that.
I know. I'm so glad because I had all five players down, but I didn't know what order to give them to you because I thought,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah, because I didn't want to go Moreno, then Reina, and then you go, oh, they're both at Como at the moment. So I was like, oh,
Oh, Reina's there now. Damn, I didn't realize he was still playing. That's
Moreno
crazy.
and Reina are both there now. Obviously, Varane was there but retired. And Zambrotta started his career at Como in '94.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. So a point each. So it's 23 to 24, 23 to 24. So it's still super close.
Yes, and everyone watching would definitely be guessing our ball knowledge. But if you thought we did it right, then make sure you join us next week as we will be here yet again. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.